In early 2026, temperatures across Cuba dropped to near freezing at the exact same time the national power grid suffered a total collapse. The lights went out because of a specific policy decision. Following a military intervention in Venezuela, the U.S. government implemented a severe oil blockade to cut off the island's primary fuel supply. Historically, Cuba relied on regular crude shipments from Venezuela and Mexico to keep its generators running. American naval forces and economic sanctions slammed those routes shut. The administration pursued a strategy of maximum pressure, aiming to squeeze the Cuban economy until the government yielded to a friendly takeover or regime change by the end of the year. This pursuit of hemispheric dominance effectively hollowed out the regional order, creating a volatile situation just 90 miles from the Florida coast. Without fuel, the country's infrastructure entered a state of paralysis. Commercial flights were grounded, crops rotted in fields without tractors, and uncollected garbage piled up as cities went dark. The U.S. expanded the siege by threatening severe tariffs against third-party countries. This pressure forced Mexico's state-owned giant, Pemex, to immediately halt its deliveries to Havana. Diplomats then targeted the island's last remaining revenue stream, pushing foreign governments to terminate their contracts with Cuban medical missions. With every regional economic safety net stripped away, the Cuban government looked outside the Western Hemisphere for its own survival. The 2025 United States Southern Command Posture Statement serves as the blueprint for U.S. military anxieties in the region. In this document, the military warns that authoritarian regimes like China and Russia are pursuing a methodical incursion into Latin America and the Caribbean. It details how these rivals seek to monopolize strategic resources and establish dual-use infrastructure, creating risks that threaten U.S. homeland defense. However, while the military was warning about foreign influence, the administration was enforcing an oil blockade that practically invited it. Washington's aggressive economic policy actively accelerated the exact foreign encroachment its own commanders considered an existential threat. In March 2026, a Russian tanker arrived in Havana carrying 100,000 tons of crude oil to restart the grid. This energy lifeline secured a persistent Russian naval presence just off the U.S. coast. China moved concurrently, providing an $80 million financial bailout and expanded Belt and Road projects to entrench its influence on the island. The blockade succeeded only in swapping Havana's reliance on Latin American neighbors for a deep structural dependence on Moscow and Beijing. The pressure campaign produced a messy diplomatic scramble, forcing both sides into secret, high-level negotiations. Havana eventually released thousands of political prisoners, a tactical concession to relieve immediate pressure, rather than a sign of systemic collapse. Traditional U.S. allies, including Canada, Mexico, and Brazil, are openly sending humanitarian aid to Cuba in defiance of the blockade. Applying a 60-year-old Cold War containment strategy often fails in a modern multipolar world, where sanctioned nations can easily find alternative global partners for economic survival. The true threat Cuba poses to the U.S. today stems from its extreme weakness, its economic instability, total agricultural failure, and waves of irregular migration.